After 9 months of study, I am convinced that if the law changes, the United States military can do this, even in a time of war.
Our basic assessment is that our military can make this change.
Now that we have completed this review, I strongly urge the Senate to pass this legislation and send it to the President for signature before the end of the year.
I came to this conclusion not only as a co-chair of the Department of Defense review, but perhaps more importantly, as the commander of U.S. Army forces in Europe. I was cognizant every day of this review that I might have to actually lead the changes including in our report. As a serving commander, I'm confident that if this law changes, I and the leaders with whom I serve can do just that.
Admiral Mullen, what has led to your change in thinking? If you could share with the committee just a bit about supporting policy change.
Well, I mean, fundamentally for me, Senator Graham, it has been the issue, this mismatch of an institution that I've been raised in my whole life that values integrity in many ways across everything we do, and then we've got thousands of men and women who were willing to die for their country that we ask them to lie about who they are every single day, I just fundamentally think that is wrong.
I understand.
And I worry, Senator Graham, that it is corrosive over time. It's not one of these things that's going to, light switch isn't going to go and it's going to be a disaster, but it is corrosive over time. And it is particularly during a time of war where we are focused so heavily on our combat mission, it undermines in ways our ability to do what we need to do because of the people side of this, because of the leadership focus it takes, et cetera. Right. And that's fundamentally what's led me to my beliefs and conclusions with respect to where we are.
In all likelihood, there were gay Americans serving at Valley Forge. There were gay Americans at Gettysburg. There were gay Americans on Normandy Beach. There are gay Americans serving in Iraq and Afghanistan today. In all likelihood, that's probably true, wouldn't you say?
Yes, sir, I think it's a very reasonable assumption.
There are probably gay Americans buried at Arlington Cemetery and in Normandy Beach, where I took my young sons a couple years ago. One of the most inspiring things you can possibly see. Those rows of crosses and the American flag flying in the breeze, people who laid down their lives for our country. There are probably gay Americans buried there, aren't there?
I think it would be a reasonable assumption.
How do we say to them or to their families that we've honored their sacrifice, laying down their life, and yet if we knew who they were, not only would they not be buried there, they would have been drummed out of the armed forces?
Senator, my response to that would be based on the oath that we took, that all of us in uniform take, and that is that we support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That means we follow the law, and so we have to do that.
This is the second time that I have dealt with this issue as a leader in public life. The prior case being at CIA in 1992, when as director I ordered that openly gay applicants be treated like all other applicants. That is, whether as individuals they met our competitive standards.
There are elements in the CIA who perform functions that are pretty similar to military functions, are there not?
Yes, sir, some.
Have you heard of any unforeseen circumstances based on your decision in those units, taking place in those units?
Not one.
We're on the front lines of a turning point in American history. We have these in every generation. This country, from the beginning, was defined not by its borders, but by our values. The Declaration of Independence says, we're all endowed by God with those equal rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And every generation has realized those rights better because they weren't realized at the beginning. In 1776 for women, for people of color, et cetera, et cetera. In our time, one of the great transitions occurring is the growing readiness and understanding among the American people that you simply it's just wrong and un-American to discriminate against people based on their sexual orientation.
To me, the issue seems to be not whether to allow gays to serve in the military, but whether to allow them to serve openly. But permitting them to serve but not openly undermines the basic values of the military: honesty, integrity, and trust. And when that's undermined anywhere, it's undermined everywhere. It also seems that our military is expected to say, I don't want to lie, but you won't let me tell the truth. How do we square this circle?
I think, Senator Nelson, I mean, you've hit at the core, from my perspective, you've hit at the core issue, and I can't square the circle. Certainly, historically have not been able to. And I think it is your comment about, if it exists anywhere, it exists everywhere. And that's been the case with respect to gay and lesbian service for my whole career, including under this law. And I think it does fundamentally undermine who we are because we're an institution that is so significantly founded and based on integrity. So I can't square it.
Since this time, my years in the military, and since being in this position, I've had the opportunity to visit Walter Reed, and I still can't get out of my mind the one time I saw a soldier who lost both his legs, lost an arm, and lost most of another arm doing crunches, to try to get his torso strengthened enough so he could still have a viable, and fulfilling life. And seeing many other injured men and women, who have not only given their lives, their limbs, but their lives. And I've been to many funerals, unfortunately, in my home state for those soldiers. And one thing I never asked was, are they gay or straight? It never even crossed my mind, to be honest with you. I just wanted to know if they gave their limb or their life, with pride and with honor for our country.
War does not stifle change, it demands it. It does not make change harder, it facilitates it. I do not believe the stressors currently manifesting themselves in the lives of our troops and their families, lengthy deployments, suicides, and health care, are rendered insurmountable or any graver by this single policy change. Nor do I believe that simply acknowledging what most of our troops already know to be true about some of their colleagues threatens our ability to fight and win this nation's wars. Quite the contrary. Today's young leaders are more attuned to combat effectiveness than any of the last 3 decades. Tempered by war, bonded through hardship, the men and women of the United States Armed Forces are the finest and most capable they have ever been. If there is a better opportunity or a better generation to effect this sort of change, I don't know of it. It is true that as chairman, I am not in charge of troops, but I've commanded 3 ships, a carrier battle group, and 2 fleets. And I was most recently a service chief myself. For more than 40 years, I've made decisions that affected and even risked the lives of young men and women. You do not have to agree with me on this issue, but don't think for one moment that I haven't carefully considered the impact of the advice I give on those who will have to live with the decisions that advice informs. I would not recommend repeal of this law if I did not believe in my soul that it was the right thing to do for our military, for our nation, and for our collective honor.
Today was the first day of 2 days of hearings on repealing the policy and practice of firing Americans from our military for the crime of being gay.